Estevan and Renan grew up together in a small town, where every street held childhood memories and shared dreams, laughter that seemed eternal, and promises they never imagined breaking. From early on, they learned that friendship is an invisible force that sustains, even in the hardest moments, a thread of hope that never breaks. World War II was approaching, and a strange sense of duty and urgency took hold of their minds, something that pushed them into the unknown without warning. They decided to enlist together, knowing that what they left behind would be forever, and that every step forward was a risk they could hardly measure. On the way to recruitment, they looked at the horizon with a mix of excitement and fear, feeling that their lives were about to change forever. Initial training was brutal, biting cold, shouting commands, endless exercises, and the weight of responsibility they had never felt before. Renan always managed to smile, even in the worst moments, and Estevan clung to that laughter as if his life depended on it. They quickly learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it, and that every heartbeat could decide between life or death. Their first combat was a violent shock, a world where everything seemed chaotic, and every decision could cost innocent lives or comrades beside them. They witnessed horrors no book could teach, burned cities, desperate civilians, and the deadly silence of those who would never return. Amidst bullets and explosions, Estevan realized how fragile human life could be, and how true friendship became the only pillar in the chaos. Renan, with his natural courage, was like a lighthouse, guiding Estevan through darkness and reminding him they were not alone. In the middle of the front, small victories were celebrated with glances and gestures, each move loaded with emotion and tension, as if time had stopped. Estevan felt fear, but an inner voice kept him firm. Renan is here. He always will be. You just have to believe. Renan disappeared during a risky mission, and Estevan spent days in despair, calling for his friend amidst the deafening noise of war. He constantly wondered if he would ever see Renan again, and every silence around seemed to scream his friend's absence. Meanwhile, rumors began circulating about a mysterious soldier, invincible, saving lives in impossible situations and disappearing without a trace. Every report made Estevan hold his breath, a mixture of hope and disbelief, imagining if that hero could be Renan. Tension rose each day, and every battle seemed to test not only physical strength, but Estevan's emotional endurance. Clinging to childhood memories, Renan always appeared in his thoughts as a silent presence, a lighthouse in the darkness, and Estevan's faith grew despite the fear. The war showed that the world can be cruel, but the human mind, when motivated by friendship and hope, finds ways to resist, survive, and fight. Each night, Estevan remembered childhood games and felt an invisible strength pushing him to continue, not to give up, to believe in miracles. The approach of a major offensive brought even more tension, and Estevan knew it would be the ultimate test of courage, intelligence, and endurance. While marching, Renan was still absent, but his presence seemed in every step, every breath, every thought Estevan had. Mental training from before the war showed its effect. Focus, discipline, and calm under pressure became the difference between life and death. During the offensive, Estevan saw soldiers fall around him, and fear threatened to dominate, but he remembered Renan and found the strength to move forward. The first weeks of combat transformed them into different men, forged by the fire of war and the need to survive. Each battle was a psychological test, and Estevan began to realize the true fight was in the mind. Fear, doubt, constant anxiety. He learned that true friendship acts like an invisible shield, protecting the mind even when the body is about to break. Renan's disappearance consumed Estevan, but also became a motivating force, a silent promise of reunion. Every rumor about the unknown hero seemed to touch Estevan's heart, creating expectation and suspense, reinforcing hope that could not die. Life on the front was a cycle of tension, action, and deadly silence. And Estevan began noticing details that had once gone unnoticed. Every sound and shadow meaning danger. He wondered if heroism could come from simple acts of survival, and whether the human mind could adapt to extreme stress. Between missions, Esteva wrote imaginary letters to Renan, speaking of fear, longing, and hope, a way to keep the connection alive despite physical absence. Time seemed to drag, and every day brought news of deaths and disappearances, leaving a deep mark on the psyche of all soldiers. Estevan began noticing patterns, signals, small coincidences that seemed to indicate Renan was still alive, silently working in the shadows. He clung to each shared memory, each laugh and childhood secret, as if it could guide him back to his lost friend. The war seemed endless, and physical and emotional exhaustion threatened to break Estevo, but faith in Renan's return was invisible, yet powerful fuel. Every subsequent mission was carried out with caution and hope, a delicate balance between survival and anticipation, keeping Estevo's heart alert. The fear of losing Renan forever became a constant presence, but also a silent strength, pushing him to be better, more attentive, more courageous. Each night, Estevo's dreams mixed reality and memory, creating images of his lost friend saving lives, a premonition preparing the stage for their reunion. He began noticing that each act of heroism in frontline stories reflected Renan's characteristics: courage, intelligence, and altruism, increasing suspicion of his survival. War taught him that every difficulty shaped character, strengthened the mind, and prepared the ground for life-changing events. The front became a high-alert environment where every sound could signal danger, but also every shadow could hide a survival opportunity. He remembered Renan in every moment, using his memory as an emotional anchor, keeping his brain focused and his mind resilient under extreme pressure. Stories of missing and returned soldiers became powerful attention triggers, as our brains are programmed to seek solutions and emotional rewards. The beginning of their story was now a mosaic of fear, courage, friendship, and expectation, building a narrative impossible to abandon even in tense moments. Each step taken on the front was a dance between survival and hope, and Estevo learned to trust his intuition, follow signs, and never give up. The first weeks taught him that courage can arise from unexpected places, and heroism often hides in silent actions, waiting for the right moment to appear. Estevo realized every challenge faced molded his character, strengthened his mind, and prepared him for what was yet to come. War transformed daily life into constant alertness, where every sound could mean danger, but also every shadow could hold opportunity. He remembered Renan in every step, using memories as emotional anchors to maintain focus and resist pressure. Stories of unknown heroes saving lives started to feel less coincidental, more like signs, as if fate was drawing a path for reunion. Estevan understood that the human mind reacts intensely to uncertainty, and hope activates brain regions that increase focus, resilience, and perseverance. Each new mission was a test, but also a chance to get closer to his lost friend, and each carefully made decision increased his sense of control and safety. The beginning of their story showed that friendship is an invisible force capable of sustaining mind and heart amidst chaos, a powerful psychological trigger. As the war progressed, Estevo learned that true strength is not only in muscles, but in the ability to keep hope, faith, and emotional bonds alive. He noticed small details, patterns, and signals indicating Renan might be alive, increasing suspense and keeping his mind constantly alert. Every night was filled with memories and predictions, mental exercises that strengthened his mind and prepared him for the next heroic act of his friend. He realized that stories of disappearance and return serve as attention triggers because our brains are wired to seek resolution and reward. The beginning of the narrative was now fertile ground for suspense, emotion, and audience connection, setting the stage for Renan's return and heroism. Estevo learned patience, observation, and hope activate resilience and motivation in the brain, making him mentally stronger. Every challenge on the front became not only physical, but psychological, and the memory of Renan was an invisible engine of perseverance. He understood that the absence of a friend, the mystery and rumors about unknown heroes were perfect mental triggers, creating suspense and anticipation. The story's beginning ended with Estevo looking at the horizon, heart tight but mind steady, knowing something extraordinary was coming, and the war still held. Many secrets. Time passed, and Estevo remained on the front lines, increasingly aware that the war was not just physical, but a constant battle against fear and doubt. He faced each mission cautiously, yet with a silent fire, knowing that hope in Renan still pulsed in his heart. The trenches became his temporary home, yet every explosion and gunshot reminded him that danger could strike at any moment. Among the chaos, Estevo began noticing subtle clues, strangely placed objects, coded messages, marks that seemed to indicate someone was secretly saving lives. His heart raced with each sign, and his mind, trained by fear and hope, sought patterns, trying to connect invisible dots. He didn't know if Renan was truly behind these signs, but the mere possibility kept him awake at night, imagining reunions and miracles. Operations grew increasingly risky, and Estevo felt the weight of each decision on his shoulders, knowing one wrong move could cost lives. With every battle, he learned that courage is not constant, but comes in waves, and that the human mind reacts in surprising ways under threat. Soldiers around him spoke of a mysterious hero appearing out of nowhere, saving entire units, disappearing before recognition could be given. Each story sounded oddly familiar, sending chills down Estevo's spine as descriptions matched his missing friend, Renan. He developed strategies to observe more carefully, noticing movements others overlooked, and every detail became crucial for survival. Amidst explosions and chaos, Estevo felt Renan's presence like an invisible energy, guiding his steps and strengthening his resilience. His brain processed each piece of information almost instinctively, recognizing patterns of survival and heroism. In one particularly dangerous mission, Estevo glimpsed a silhouette saving surrounded soldiers, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Instinct told him it was Renan, and the mix of adrenaline and hope created an unshakable emotional connection. He noticed that each small act of bravery by the unknown hero bore Renan's traits: intelligence, speed, precision, and selflessness. Fear remained, but hope became fuel, driving Estevo to continue, to survive, to watch for signs of his friend. Nights were long and silent, but Estevo's mind stayed on high alert, processing every noise, shadow, and scent with extreme attention. He realized that the human mind responds to mystery with intense focus, and every ambiguous sign could keep hope alive. Rumors of the unknown hero spread rapidly, and soldiers began telling stories of miracles and impossible rescues. Each account made Estevo hold his breath, trying to decipher if it was coincidence or if Renan truly was behind these events. On a cold night, he found a lost letter, written in a familiar hand but unsigned. His heart almost exploded with emotion. The paper contained precise instructions that saved an entire unit from an ambush, reinforcing his suspicion that Renan was nearby, observing and protecting. Estevo felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Renan was alive, but where? What would be his next move? Every detail heightened the emotional tension. Subsequent battles became a greater psychological test as Estevo's mind needed balance between fear, hope, and full focus. He learned to use anxiety as a tool, turning worry into attention and doubt into survival strategy. The war seemed endless, yet each action, each decision, and every observation reinforced his certainty that Renan was more than a friend. He was a symbol of hope. The front lines were filled with invisible dangers, mines, gunfire, strategically positioned enemies, but Renan's presence seemed to create an invisible shield around Estevo. During a mission, Estevo finally saw Renan up close, saving soldiers with impossible precision, disappearing before anyone could thank him. The vision unleashed a wave of emotions: joy, disbelief, relief, and a quiet certainty that the war could still end well. Renan's heroism was not showy, but silent, strategic, as if he had mastered fear and learned to use the mind as a weapon. Each brave act increased Renan's reputation among soldiers, and Estevo felt pride and a deep emotional connection. They moved across the front, Estevo observing signs, Renan acting silently, tension growing with every enemy movement. Estevo's mind was hyperactive, processing situations quickly, anticipating the friend's next heroic move. In a devastating attack, Estevan was surrounded, but an unexpected intervention saved him, and looking at the shadow that saved him, he knew it was Renan. The emotion was overwhelming. His body trembled, and his mind processed the event as almost supernatural, reinforcing the invisible bond between them. He realized the war was not just physical, but a dance of intelligence, courage, and perception, with Renan as master of this invisible art. Every new battle, Estevo mentally noted details, creating patterns, anticipating dangers, knowing Renan would appear at the right moment. Suspense intensified because no one knew where Renan would be, and uncertainty acted as a mental trigger, keeping attention sharp. They endured days of rain, mud, and cold, yet the human mind proved more resilient than the body ever could. Estevan realized that each act of courage observed increased his focus and decision-making, a direct effect of intense emotional experience. Missions grew more complex, yet Renan always seemed to anticipate threats, silently guiding Estevan and others. His brain responded to anticipation with heightened alertness, releasing adrenaline and dopamine, reinforcing readiness. He noticed that Renan's absence created continuous suspense, generating emotional intensity that Estevan could not ignore. During a surprise night attack, Estevan was about to fall, but a soldier intervened, and every detail reflected traits of Renan. The emotion was almost unbearable. Fear, hope, and admiration combined, activating maximum mental alertness and emotional connection. Estevo observed movement patterns, survival strategies, and intelligence that could only belong to someone as familiar as Renan. The war tested not only body, but mind and emotions, and Estevo became increasingly efficient at anticipating dangers. Renan's heroism had a profound psychological impact, proving that silent courage is as powerful as visible acts. Estevan understood that a friend's presence could determine survival, even when that friend was physically absent. Among battles and explosions, he noted small details once ignored, interpreting them as messages or signs from his lost friend. Suspense became part of routine, keeping him alert, motivated, and psychologically ready for extreme situations. On a quiet night, Estevan received a coded message, saving dozens of lives, confirming Renan's proximity but invisibility. The emotional impact was overwhelming. Joy mixed with anxiety, fear, and admiration, producing extreme brain activation. He realized each mission, act of courage, and survival strengthened body, mind, and spirit. Time passed, each battle part of a narrative combining suspense, emotion, and deep connection between friends. Every intervention by Renan reinforced Estevo's belief in miracles and that the human mind can surpass unimaginable limits. They moved across the front with precision and strategy, Renan invisible, creating unbelievable stories. Suspense intensified because each partial reunion or silent act heightened emotional tension, keeping Estevão fully engaged. Each day became a test of intelligence, courage, and perception, and Estevão learned to trust intuition, signs, and the invisible connection with his friend. Renan's heroism became legend, and Estevão felt pride and a deep emotional bond strengthening his brain and spirit. Between explosions, bullets, and chaos, Estevão learned that the human mind responds to overcoming stories with intense focus, motivation, and resilience. Small clues of his missing friend acted as mental triggers, keeping him alert, emotionally involved, and psychologically prepared. Each victory, act of heroism and survival increased anticipation for the full reunion, creating irresistible emotional tension. Renan's invisible presence became decisive for Estevão and his comrades, showing the power of courage and strategic intelligence. The human brain reacts intensely to mystery and hope, and Estevão experienced this with every mission and unexpected act by his friend. Amid the war, he began understanding narrative power, expectation, and suspense, and how they shape behavior, attention, and emotion. Partial reunions increased motivation, focus, and ability to face extreme situations, proving the strength of invisible bonds. Every night was filled with memories, predictions, and pattern analysis, preparing Estevão for the next heroic act of his missing friend. The war continued, but Estevão's mind remained alert, processing, learning, and anticipating, guided by hope and mystery. Each act of heroism he witnessed increased dopamine and adrenaline, strengthening body and mind for what was to come. Suspense was almost unbearable, yet each small victory by Renan served as emotional reward, keeping Estevão fully engaged. He realized the war was about perception, emotional intelligence, and human connection, not just weapons and strategy. Estevão's mind now tuned into every detail, every sign, every pattern, and hope became a tangible force for survival. Every mission, battle, and silent intervention reinforced the narrative of heroism, courage, and resilience, keeping the audience mentally captivated. The war became a laboratory for the mind, and Estevão discovered that attention, perception, and hope are weapons as powerful as any military tool. As they advanced, every act of the missing friend reminded that true courage doesn't need recognition, but impacts lives deeply. He understood that waiting, suspense, and uncertainty are powerful mental triggers, keeping focus, motivation, and emotion high. Each small sign from Renan increased emotional intensity, reinforcing the invisible bond connecting them despite absolute chaos. The middle of the story ended with Estevão stronger, more alert, and convinced that his missing friend would not just survive but change everything when he reappeared. The dawn brought a strange silence, as if the world was holding its breath, and Estevão felt in his chest that something extraordinary was about to happen. He advanced through the ruins of a devastated city, every step heavy, every breath measured, when he heard a familiar sound, almost impossible to believe. It was Renan's voice, strong, calm, and full of determination, echoing between destroyed buildings, reminding Estevão of their past, friendship, and promises made. Estevão's heart raced, and every cell reacted as if it had received a shock of hope, fear, and disbelief at the same time. He ran, stumbling over rubble, barely believing he was finally about to reunite with the friend who had disappeared so long ago. And there was Renan, no longer the boy from a small town, but a man forged by the fire of war, eyes steady, posture confident, every movement radiating courage. The reunion was silent for a few seconds, just glances speaking louder than words, an invisible connection transcending everything. Renan advanced, embracing Esteban with force, as if transferring all the energy accumulated during months of danger, separation, and battles. Tears came, not only from relief, but from deep emotion, happiness, pride, and the certainty that miracles can happen even in the darkest moments. Renan began to tell his story, infiltrating enemy territories, impossible rescues, actions saving hundreds without ever seeking recognition. Every detail he narrated fascinated Esteban, increasing admiration and the psychological impact of realizing human courage can reach unimaginable levels. Renan explained he had disappeared intentionally, using strategy and emotional intelligence to create survival opportunities and save as many lives as possible. He spoke with precision and humility, each word filled with emotion, each gesture conveying the truth that courage is not just physical, but mental and emotional. Esteban realized Renan had transformed not just into a hero, but a living symbol of hope, resilience, and silent leadership. The reunion sent a wave of positive energy across the battlefield, inspiring everyone nearby to fight with strength and determination. They walked together through the ruined streets, revisiting battles, dangers, and memories, each step making the story come alive. Soldiers around them watched with respect and admiration, realizing this reunion symbolized more than friendship. It was courage triumphing over fear. Renan began leading operations with Esteban by his side, combining intelligence, strategy, and bravery, saving lives and changing destinies. The psychological impact on soldiers was profound. Leadership presence, hope, and courage triggered brain responses, increasing focus, attention, and perseverance. Each successful mission reinforced the bond between the friends, showing that together they were stronger than any obstacle. Renan, despite being seen as a hero, never overshadowed Esteban, always including him in decisions, sharing victories, and protecting those around them. The battlefield, once a scene of despair, became a stage of hope, courage, and overcoming, with their actions creating new narratives for other soldiers. Esteban noticed suspense, uncertainty, and anticipation worked as powerful mental triggers, keeping the mind alert and engaged. Each act of Renan inspired Esteban to surpass himself, his constant presence reminding him that true friendship is decisive in moments of crisis. They faced increasingly dangerous battles, but Esteban's mind was trained to anticipate every move, every trap, every threat. Renan, the silent hero, inspired Esteban and others to act with courage and intelligence, proving that bravery is as much mental as physical. The final offensive approached, and every move was precise, protecting lives and ensuring survival. Esteban realized Renan's courage did not need applause. Every life saved, every soldier protected was proof of heroism. The reunion transformed fear into strategy, despair into action, and uncertainty into total focus, showing how intense emotions shape behavior. During the decisive attack, Renan led with mastery, Esteban by his side, each step calculated, every act saving lives. The psychological impact was enormous. Motivated soldiers, heightened focus, courage fueled by the inspiring presence of the friends. At the end of the battle, when the smoke cleared, victory was undeniable. But more important than territory was the transformation they had experienced. Renan and Esteban embraced on the battlefield, eyes locked, knowing nothing could break their bond. Not war, not time, not danger. They walked back to Allied lines, soldiers watching with respect, realizing true strength lies in unity, courage, and emotional intelligence. Renan's heroism became living legend. and Estevão realized friendship, hope, and faith are weapons no one can destroy. Every story about them increased morale, and the human mind responds to suspense, emotion, and admiration with intense engagement. They celebrated victories silently, knowing war left scars but also created narratives of courage and triumph that would never fade. Renan shared all details of his missions, teaching Estevão and others to recognize patterns, anticipate dangers, and use the mind as an invisible weapon. Estevão understood the experience was not only survival, but mental growth, emotional courage, and psychological strength. They visited destroyed cities, helping civilians, rebuilding hope, proving heroism goes beyond medals or fame. Every act of kindness reinforced emotional connection, triggering admiration, respect, and motivation among those who observed. Their friendship became an example of loyalty, courage, and resilience, inspiring others to overcome fear and maintain hope. Renan never let recognition change him, and Estevão learned true heroism is silent, strategic, and emotionally intelligent. Together, they transformed each challenge into opportunity, every battle into a lesson, each victory into inspiration. The reunion and heroic acts created a narrative impossible to ignore, capturing attention, emotion, and motivation. Their stories were told in newspapers, books, and films, but nothing captured the full emotional intensity experienced on the front. Estevão realized that narratives of courage, hope, and reunion act as powerful mental triggers, keeping minds fully immersed. Renan and Estevão became symbols of overcoming, showing that even in the harshest conditions, the human mind can transcend fear and pain. They returned home, but the legacy of war, friendship, and silent heroism remained alive in memories and stories. The final reunion proved courage and emotional intelligence can transform destinies, save lives, and create legends. Every hug, every tear, every shared smile was proof that true friendship is a force capable of overcoming any war or challenge. Renan and Estevão realized war had transformed but also elevated them, creating a narrative of hope, heroism, and eternal bond. Their story became an example that the impossible can become possible, and the human mind, guided by courage and friendship, is invincible. They celebrated survival, heroic acts, and lives saved, knowing they built a narrative that would inspire generations. Estevão realized that every detail of reunion and battles could teach, inspire, and motivate, activating emotion and attention intensely. Renan's heroism and Estevão's courage showed that unity, strategy, and emotional intelligence are essential in extreme challenges. Each memory of the war transformed into lessons, each heroic act into inspiration for those facing fear, pain, and uncertainty. The war ended, but the narrative of reunion, disappearance, and heroism remained alive, capturing attention and emotion. Renan and Estevão proved that courage, hope, and intelligence can create miracles even in the darkest moments. Their legacy spread, inspiring not just soldiers, but all who believe in the power of friendship, strategy, and the human mind. Peace returned, but their story remained a testament that overcoming fear, loyalty, and emotional strength is eternal. Renan, the silent hero, and Estevão, the loyal friend, became symbols that even in the darkest darkness, the light of courage and hope shines brightest. They walked home together side by side, each step a reminder that the human mind can turn fear into action, absence into reunion, pain into inspiration. The story's conclusion showed that true victory is not only on the battlefield, but in courage, loyalty, and emotional strength that shapes invisible heroes. Estevão and Renan, finally together, proved that friendship is an invincible force capable of overcoming any challenge. Their steps back home were filled with memories, lessons, and the certainty that together they could face anything. Renan's heroism had saved lives and inspired minds, leaving a psychological and emotional impact far beyond the battlefield. Estevan's admiration and emotional connection proved that deep bonds can fuel courage and resilience in extreme circumstances. The end of their story was more than military victory. It was the triumph of mind, heart, and true friendship over adversity. They continued their lives, carrying lessons, memories, and the invisible strength forged in war, a legacy that would never fade. Renan and Estevan became living proof that courage, hope, and emotional intelligence can create heroes invisible to the world, yet unforgettable. Their journey showed that even in chaos, the human mind can be trained to see signs, anticipate danger, and act with courage. The story closed with both walking side by side, a symbol of friendship, strategy, and the power of hope in the face of darkness. Every heartbeat, every glance, and every memory confirmed that courage guided by friendship is a force no one can defeat. Renan and Estevan's legend lived on, inspiring generations to overcome fear, trust bonds, and harness the full power of mind and emotion. They had survived war, heroism had emerged, and the invisible bonds of friendship proved stronger than any weapon or threat. The final chapter left a clear message. True heroism lies not in recognition, but in courage, strategy, loyalty, and hope. And so, the two friends walked forward side by side, their story etched into the hearts of all who heard it, a timeless lesson in resilience, courage, and the power of the human mind.